tackling tough topics to help you think reasonably about life's most important issues. This is Thinker Sensitive. Welcome to another episode of Thinker Sensitive. My name is Ryan Ragazine, and I am your host. Today we're going to be talking about division and unity. Why do we focus so much on what divides us instead of focusing on what unites us? Once upon a time, a long time ago, the Earth was comprised of just one continent, surrounded by a massive ocean. This gigantic supercontinent, called Pangaea, slowly broke apart, separating and spreading out to form the continents that we now know today. Sometime after this, the human race came to be. Legend has it that all human beings share a common ancestry, descending from a population of Homo sapiens that originated on the continent of Africa. As the story goes, these first human beings eventually broke off from one another and spread across the globe, inhabiting the whole Earth. We live in a conflicting and paradoxical world. On one hand, the world is more integrated and united than ever. The information age and the age of globalization has brought the world together in a way that we simply have never seen before. On the other hand, we live in a very fragmented and divided world. We see this very clearly in the United States. Thanks in large part to social media, which is kind of the new Wild West, and deeply partisan news outlets, this might be the most polarized our nation has been since the Civil War period. We are a greatly diverse and greatly divided country, fragmented and torn apart on the basis of race, religion, ideology, gender, sexuality, and politics. As I've mentioned before, I'm a Protestant Christian, but an ecumenical theologian, which means I care about the unity of the church in Christ. Today, there are probably hundreds of Protestant denominations, which is a scandal and a stain on Christianity itself. Wolfhart Pannenberg, one of the last great theologians in the history of the church, once said that Christians really have no right to call for peace, unity, and reconciliation in the world while the church itself is divided and fragmented. The church loses its voice and loses its credibility as long as it remains shattered. We must remember that it was Jesus Christ who first said that a house divided cannot stand. Denominations split off from one another because too often people tend to focus on the few intricate details that divide us instead of focusing on the many major ideas that unite us. In the church, we also tend to confuse what is primary with what is secondary and even tertiary. The classical ecumenical creeds of the church, the preaching of the apostles, the charismatic call for faith and repentance, the predominance of faith, hope, and love, and the person and work of Christ are all things in which all Christians can generally be united. Yet we tend to focus on marginal things and matters of secondary importance that divide us. In short, The church is good at making mountains out of anthills. Unfortunately, throughout the history of the church, many people have been killed because of these anthills. Outside the church and in society at large, we have race wars and divisions over ethnicity. To put the problem succinctly, I think we've become too race conscious and too sensitive to racial difference in our culture, which actually, in my opinion, becomes counterproductive to social justice and racial equality. The predominant emphasis today should be on the universal, the human, which is both unifying and primary, rather than on the particular, race or ethnicity, which is often divisive and certainly secondary. Our primary focus should be on the universally human, humankind, our shared nature and essence as human beings, not on being white or being black or being Asian or being Hispanic. MLK was right. The most foundational, primary, and unifying idea is that all human beings are created in the image of God and are therefore equally valuable and beautiful and equally worthy of dignity, respect, and love. Like with religion, I know I don't have to remind people about all of the violence and hatred that is stemmed from overemphasizing what divides us and what is ultimately secondary. Now, this doesn't mean that there isn't any room for a healthy pride in ethnicity. It simply means that the universal should be given priority over the particular in the human pecking order. So, why do we focus on what divides instead of on what unites? I think there are several possible reasons for this. First, we focus on difference or disagreement because we sincerely believe that it's important. The difference in question is truly important to us, and we believe that it should also be important to others. Let's take a look at an example. Maybe you recycle while your friend doesn't. And maybe you bring up the topic in conversation and shed light on the difference, not because you're trying to create discord, but because you sincerely care about the issue. This is something that you think would benefit your friend's ethical decision making and lifestyle, and that would benefit your society in general and the environment as a whole. The second possible reason is personal insecurity and defensiveness, even fear. The difference or disagreement in question makes us insecure about our own view on the topic. We feel concern or worry about the possibility of being wrong. So we get defensive and argumentative, bringing up the difference or disagreement in order to show, often to ourselves, that we can win an argument. We're trying to keep up the appearance that our view is the right view. Sometimes we feel the need to convince others of what we ourselves are struggling to believe. In the midst of trying to convince others, we're really trying to convince ourselves. This is closely related to pride. Someone might always think that they're right, always need to be right, and always need to be perceived as being right. Because of this, one might view every difference of opinion or dividing line as an opportunity to demonstrate their superiority and stoke their pride. A person may bring up some political ideology or economic theory that they know is divisive in order to accomplish this. In response, you might be thinking, why do we have to talk about politics? We were having such a good time until someone felt the need to bring up a divisive topic out of nowhere. Pride often masquerades as confidence, but it often comes out of insecurity. The person who is truly confident about what she believes in doesn't need to win an argument and doesn't need to be perceived by others as being in the right. The fourth reason why we tend to focus on what divides us instead of focusing on what unites us is that the negative naturally jumps out to us more than the positive. The difference jumps out to us more than the similarity. The disagreement more than the agreement. For instance, your friend might agree with you on all of your Quentin Tarantino takes except for one. You think Reservoir Dogs was a great film, but she doesn't. Instead of focusing on everything that you agree on, your mind can't stop thinking about the one movie that you diverge on. This is just human nature. We tend to focus on the negative and ignore the positive. Isn't it also true that we all want other people to agree with us? And when they don't, it bothers us? Why do we expect people to agree with us? Why are we uncomfortable with disagreement? Why does disagreement have to be a negative thing? Another possible reason for this is that we're not comfortable with equivocation. That is, we're not comfortable with multiple possibilities, interpretations, and views. We're inflexible, we're unopen, we're narrow minded, and we may even have a very simplistic, black and white view of truth. This relates to what we've said about both insecurity and pride. Very rarely in life is there only one answer to a question, one solution to a problem, or one way of seeing things or doing things. Our inflexibility and closed mindedness make it difficult to tolerate difference. Finally, I think a symbiotic relationship exists between confusing the primary with the secondary and focusing on what divides us. Because I treat what is secondary as if it were primary, I focus on what divides us instead of on what unites us, since I view the dividing factor as being ultimate when it's actually not. There are so many examples of this within Christianity. The biblical translation that I use, views on baptism and communion, and literal or symbolic interpretations of select passages. Let me close out today's podcast with some personal recommendations on how to approach difference and how to foster unity. Differences and divergences are natural. They're intrinsic parts of the human experience and the human condition. Examples include gender, sexuality, ethnicity, personality traits, attributes, characteristics, and personal qualities. Difference is natural. The only way to do away with difference is to do away with the human race. No two human beings are the same, and that's okay. We shouldn't expect all human beings to think the same, speak the same, and act the same. We shouldn't desire all human beings to look the same, walk the same, and talk the same. Reality is defined by both division and unity. The human genome is a good example of this. It's virtually the same in all people, to the point that we're basically carbon copies of each other. But there are still super small variations across the genome, which account for about 0.001% of each person's DNA. Though these genetic variations are minuscule at best, they create drastic differences in appearance and health from person to person. For all the unity and commonality found in the human genome, not even siblings have the same exact DNA. Built into the very fabric of nature is the relationship between division and unity. In my opinion, there's nothing wrong with identifying diversity. There's nothing wrong with calling out and naming difference. I have zero issue with acknowledging that this person is white, or this person is black, or this person is male, and this person is female, or that this person is religious and this person is not, or that this person is a Republican and this person is a Democrat. Again, these differences are part of the makeup of reality. And to deny them is to deny what is essentially human. The problem is when we acknowledge the difference while ignoring the commonality. The problem is when we focus on the division without recognizing the unity. The issue lies not so much in the differences themselves, nor in the mere recognition of the differences, but in our attitudes towards the differences and how we choose to approach them and handle them. With this in mind, let me end with 7 very concise, concrete applications for today. First, in my conversations, I should be slow to bring up what divides and quick to bring up what unites. Second, I should evaluate myself for areas of insecurity and pride. Third, I need to learn to acknowledge the reality of human subjectivity, the complexity of truth, the importance of nuance, and the possibility of variance in interpretations. Fourth, I need to refine and narrow my view on what is actually primary and truly ultimate. Fifth, I should learn to prioritize the universal over the particular. Sixth, I shouldn't acknowledge difference without also acknowledging commonality. I shouldn't recognize what divides while ignoring what unites. And lastly, I should always seek peace, unity, and reconciliation in my relationships and in the world at large. As always, thanks so much for listening. This episode, and all episodes of Thinker Sensitive, are available at thinkersensitive.com, iTunes, Spotify, and more. If you enjoy our content and wish to donate to help us grow our online community of thinkers, please visit thinkersensitive.com.